Ladies and gentlemen, get ready to embark on a journey like no other. Welcome to the Glum Lot Podcast,
your go-to destination for a unique blend of recovery and discovery.
I'm Brett.
And I'm Mark. And in this podcast, we will endeavor to create a safe and uplifting space for our guests and listeners to share their stories with sincerity and a touch of humor.
Remember, we are not a Glum Lot. The Glum Lot Podcast is more than just a source of entertainment. It's a beacon of hope, proving that even in the darkest moments, recovery is possible. Every story we share carries the power to inspire positive change.
So buckle up, get ready to listen, and join us in discovering the strength that lies within every individual's journey. This is the Glum Lot Podcast, where humor meets hope. All right, Brett, welcome to episode 67 of the Glum Lot Podcast.
Man, 67. We just keep going up one by one.
That's the way it works, man.
Oh, okay.
It's linear.
It is.
It's linear. You know,
yeah, I'm not used to living a linear life.
Just like time itself. So what is on your mind today?
Oh, I heard a doozy.
Yeah, I like doozies.
Yeah, so we know that there's all these cliches and sayings in AA, and this one really struck me. It's, if you're neck deep in shit, it's okay to piss your pants.
Okay, expound on that.
Well, let's think about this. I think we all understand that we got neck deep in shit.
Yeah.
Right, we got that part.
Didn't come in on a winning streak.
Right, but sometimes during the 12-step process, there's certain things, certain steps, that we may feel embarrassed about or we don't want to do because somebody else might, think something of us.
Highlight step 4.
Yeah, right. Right? And so some things might be embarrassing, but think about it. If you're already neck deep in all of this crap, what's the difference? Just go for it.
Yeah.
Right?
It's got to be all or nothing.
Right.
You're all got to be all in.
Yeah, there's no embarrassment. You've already done a whole bunch of embarrassment. Yep. And you're dealing with somebody just like you.
It takes honesty, openness, and willingness, and you have to go to any lengths.
Yeah.
And I know for a lot of people, they 3-step the program. Step 1, 2, 3, and out.
The 3-step waltz?
Yes. And when it comes to 4 and 5, people are always a little reticent. And I get that because it's the first step. It requires you to take action and take a hard look at yourself and admit your defeat in the way it showed up in your life.
Yeah.
And it's the start of getting better.
Right.
It's the start of making repairs, changing character defects. So it's daunting for some people. Everybody that goes through it says the same thing.
Absolutely.
It wasn't as bad as I thought it was.
It's actually freeing.
I also heard the only people that are afraid of step 4 and 5 are the people that have never done it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's probably true. But
yeah, so go ahead and piss your pants.
Yeah, why not?
Right?
Yeah.
Feel the warmth that comes out of
yum,
that.
Yum. All right, and with that lovely thought,
Yes.
I would like to welcome our guest.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Long-time listener, long-time sobriety, long-term great messages at
One
meetings.
of those that was very influential to me
Yes.
because of his messages.
And we'd like to welcome Roger.
Roger!
All right, welcome to the Glum Lot Podcast, Roger.
Hey, Roger.
Thank you.
So good, glad to have you here. We want to start, as always, with your sobriety date.
My sobriety date is November 10th, 1978.
Okay, that was a little while ago, I guess, right? Let's
Yeah.
see.
46 years?
I just graduated high school, and I'm old. Wow. So that's
It'll be 46.
46 this year.
This year. Yeah.
amazing. That's fantastic.
Well, let's not say 46 then, because you never know what you're going to do.
Right.
Oh, boy. Now, we'd like to take you back to your introduction to alcohol as a young person. Do you remember that?
Oh yeah. Grew up in a small town, a village, and every small town has a town drunk, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like an Otis?
Well, yeah. Like an Otis.
From the Andy
yeah.
Griffith Show?
Right.
My cousin and I, we were 16, and we devised this plan. We went and found the town drunk Otis, and we took him down to the liquor store, and we gave him enough money to buy a bottle of whatever he wanted and buy us a bottle of what we wanted. And we got this bottle of vodka, and we went down to the beach, and we drank it all, my cousin and I. We just got fallen down slobbering drunk. And the next day, had this terrible hangover, but I wanted to drink again.
Mm-hmm.
So what did it give you? What was the feeling? What was it like? Was it quick?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thinking about it, yeah, it was quick. You know, all the problems I had went away.
Okay.
It was after drink number 4 or 5, I don't know.
Yeah.
But it went away. And that was a really cool feeling. I was like, got to try this again.
Yeah.
You know?
So you've got a certain sense of freedom,
Yeah.
relaxation, well-being, all the
Little bit of muscles,
euphoric,
maybe?
little bit of stuff that goes with it. And you liked it.
Yeah.
And you said, I'll do that. No wonder people drink, right?
Yeah. So I pursued that. You know, I started hanging around with older guys. And you can drink anytime you want to. Age, it doesn't make any difference.
Right.
So I pretty much drank as much as I wanted to. Drank my way through high school. Took me an extra year
Okay.
to get through high school, but
Because of that?
because of that,
Okay.
Yeah.
yeah.
Were you blown off school and not doing any kind of schoolwork? Just
I just
going
no,
out drinking, screw it, right?
I didn't have enough time.
Yeah.
Too busy.
I had to concentrate on my drinking.
Was your drinking pretty severe from the start? Well, I mean, obviously the first day was, but
Yeah.
were you like a casual drinker at first?
No, I always drank to excess. If I went out with a bunch of guys, they all went home at 10 o'clock or so. I stayed until closing.
Ooh,
Yeah.
so you were
Right.
special.
I always stayed until the last dog was hung.
You possessed a certain set of skills.
I like
Yes.
that.
That
So the
will-
last dog was what?
That will not
The
kill
last
anyone.
dog was hung.
I hung the last dog.
I gotcha.
So did this persisted until 13th grade, right?
Yeah.
And then you graduated.
Graduated.
Did you smoke any weed back then? Anything like that?
I never smoked weed until the 70s, and it
Fitting.
didn't do anything for me.
Not your thing.
I didn't like the feeling.
Yeah, alcohol was always your choice.
Yep, alcohol was always my choice. When I was in high school, I got a job working at a place at an estate, and there was a lot of booze available.
Mm-hmm.
And so, here's a whole bar full of liquor, so I tried everything.
So by estate, you mean like a rich guy's house?
Yeah.
Was it Bruce Wayne?
No, wasn't Bruce Wayne. No. So I sampled all this different kind of liquor.
Oh, so you got to
Yeah.
find a favorite?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, bourbon.
Oh, that was it.
Oh man,
Whoa,
that was wow. That was instant. When I tasted bourbon, I was like, ooh, this stuff's pretty good. Burns
Yeah,
a
there's
little
something
bit,
to
but
it. Yeah.
Just a little bit.
So you get out of high school. What do you do?
what did I do? I got married, moved from the small town to a city, and went to work for a big company, and made good money. But my drinking continued, and eventually it catches up to you where you work. I worked for this company for 10 years. I was married for 8 years, drank my way through a divorce. And then,
Now, are you at this point? Are you drinking every day? Like you get out of work, you go to the bar, that kind of thing.
every day I drank, yeah.
Yeah.
Did you slow down when you got married, though, a little bit, because you knew you had to grow up a little, or did that not even enter your mind?
I don't think I slowed down.
Yeah.
I just,
Was your wife a drinker at all?
no,
Okay.
no.
That puts a little strain on the
Yes,
marriage.
that definitely.
Yeah, just a little.
So 8 years and out with that.
So 8 years, and we got divorced. And then it was about 2 years after that I remarried.
Oh, okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So, still married to that same woman.
Okay.
Which is absolutely amazing.
Yeah. So did you the job you kept when you got divorced, right?
Yeah.
But a couple years later, that caught up to you too.
Yeah, I had this knack of realizing when I was going to get fired.
You could feel it coming.
You could tell.
So you could feel it coming. So I just give them my notice and leave, right? And I did that with, I don't know, 3 jobs, I guess.
Oh, so you could just tell.
Yeah, you know.
So were you just having some attendance problems, tardiness, or was it performance related?
Attendance.
Was a big deal.
Yes.
A little cocktail flu,
Yes.
quite often. Yeah.
I look back at it now, and I went into work just drunk.
From the night before?
Just really.
What type of work were you doing? Was it labor?
Were you a brain
Was it-
surgeon, handling weapons?
Oh, my God, that reminds me of...
I was, think about this, I was an overhead crane operator
Oh,
for about
jeez.
4 years.
That could have been a Foster Brooks thing right there, right?
And then I was working in these pouring pits, pouring molten aluminum.
I thought he said porn. I'm sorry.
I thought he said piss porn.
Oh, my God.
Like golden shower
All
porn.
right, let's not go there. Gee whiz.
But he said
It's a God-fearing man.
pouring
Come on.
aluminum.
Yes, okay. Pouring
Which, to me,
aluminum.
I've seen people pour aluminum. It's the coolest looking thing in the
Right?
world.
Yeah.
Pouring this silver liquid. It's just so cool
Yeah.
looking.
Yeah. I did that stuff drunk.
Yeah, that's
It
crazy.
was just,
Was there a lot of guys that worked in those kind of trades that drank during
similar.
work back in the day?
there was always a couple, 2 or 3
Yeah. And you were friends with
that I
him?
remembered. Not really close friends, no.
Gotcha.
Nobody seemed to drink like I did.
Yeah. Did you you just hit it at work? Keep it in your locker or whatever?
No, I didn't drink on the job.
Oh, okay.
I just go into work just.
Now, were you drunk from the night before?
Or were you preparing
No,
to
you
get
always
through
had
the
a
day?
few before you went in.
Okay.
Ah,
So you
yeah.
could feel okay. Hair of the dog, right?
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Holy shit, that's a brutal life. That's
It
a
is.
brutal way to
It
live a
is.
life. It is. So you go through a couple jobs and you're still married. Are there any legal consequences along the way?
I went through bankruptcy.
But your life is just generally
Yeah,
unmanageable, right?
I got thrown in jail, I think, 3 times.
For,
Oh, that's
like,
all?
With like drunk
Yeah.
and disorderly, or
Yeah, disorderly conduct.
yeah.
One lighter side to getting arrested. I got arrested for disorderly conduct one night, and I'm handcuffed. 2 cops take me down to the patrol car, and they're going to put me in the back seat, right? But they forgot to open the door. Right, so I'm laying on the ground. They bounced me right off the door. I'm laying on the ground, right? And the cop says, "Oh, I'm sorry." And so he gets me off the ground, and I said something I probably shouldn't have said. And I'm on the ground again, right? And, "Oh, I'm sorry."
Sorry again.
That just happened to close again.
So finally it was like, I think I just better shut my mouth and let him put me in the car. Boy, I hurt for a couple of days after that.
So were you a bar guy or were you
barroom
bars?
drinker.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. At the end of those couple arrests, was that during the time when they used to do an evaluation in court? Would they evaluate you for alcoholism or no?
Yeah, one of the disorderly conduct deals involved my wife. And so I went up in front of a judge, and I went to counseling. And of all things, they sent me to a controlled drinking class.
Controlled
But that
drinking.
sounds good.
Controlled
Really good
drinking,
idea.
right?
Yeah,
That
I haven't-
always works for us.
Yes. Did you learn?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What the hell was? Oh, is that where they say if you drink this much in an hour, you'll be okay,
where they
and you
get into the
gotta wait
ounces?
another hour? Right, they're giving you all the formulas.
You had to set a goal for the next week, and I failed every single
Yeah.
week. I failed.
Well, if you drink alcoholically, there's
no way.
goddamn way that's going to
Yeah.
happen. You know?
I just didn't care.
Yeah. Well, plus, if we could have controlled it, we would have.
And we're overachievers. We want to do better than what they said to do.
Right. So, but they never really evaluate to the point of saying you should go to AA meetings or
No.
They didn't really have rehabs back then to speak of, right?
No, there was.
I think they had like Dick Van Dyke at one point and Betty Ford maybe at one point, but they weren't a big business like they are now. So
no, there weren't any rehabs to speak of.
yeah, the only rehab was the drunk tank, and that solved the little. So you're bouncing through an unmanageable life like this. What is your wife offering you for this behavior?
Well, she was lucky enough to enjoy my last 5 years of drinking.
Oh, boy.
Which really went downhill. It just got really, really bad.
So the progression really starts kicking in.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And well, I can tell you what happened the night I didn't pick up the next drink. My wife had had enough, and I'm sitting in my living room and I'm drunk, and all of a sudden there's a deputy sheriff standing there, and I'm like, what do you want? And he said, "You can't live here anymore." I went, this is my house. And he said, no, your wife doesn't want you here anymore.
Wow.
I said, all right. So I went and got in the patrol car. He drove me into the city, and he dropped me off at a bar. That's where I wanted to go.
Oh, shit.
And so I remember going into the bar, but I'd reached a point where I was having blackouts.
Mm-hmm.
And blackouts begin, they're real short.
Oh, okay.
Right? But the more booze you put into it, the more I was so saturated with alcohol in my brain that the blackouts were getting longer and longer and longer. And I came out of a blackout, I'm sitting at a bar, and I'm like, when did I get here? I don't remember coming to this bar. And I didn't know any of the people, and I'm sitting there, and I'm like, I don't know what day it is. I don't know where my wife is. I don't know where my kids are. I don't know if I got a job.
Let alone where you are.
And I'm sitting there, and I'm like, oh, my God, I got to stop doing this. And I sat there, and I got up off the bar stool, and I took a dime. Now, this is how long ago this is.
Yeah.
Took a dime, and there was a payphone on the wall. And looked in the phone book, and this alcohol thing that I'd gone to for counseling, in that building was a small detox unit. And I remembered it, and I called him. And this guy, Dick, answered the phone, and I told him what was going on. And he said, well, if you can get yourself over here, we'll see if we can help you. And I was a mess. I looked in the mirror across the bar, and I hadn't taken a bath in days, and I hadn't shaved. I had puke and food all over my shirt. And I called a cab, went to the detox center, and Dick and this woman named Nancy sat there, and they talked to me for several hours. Just poured coffee into me. I'm drinking coffee and talking to them, and first cup of coffee they gave me, I picked it up, and I was shaking so bad I spilled it all over my hands, and it's scalding hot, and I can't feel it. So Nancy takes the cup from me, and she goes off, and she comes back with a big cup, and it's only half full. And I remember that vividly.
Isn't that something?
It wasn't her first rodeo, huh?
Yeah.
An act of kindness to a freaking out-of-control drunk.
Now, were they talking to you during that time about the disease of alcoholism?
Yeah, what was the conversation?
They were talking to me about how much I drank and why I drank and all of this stuff, right? And I'm just sitting there, and I don't know. I didn't know what else to do, right?
Lost.
And finally, after, 2-3 hours talking with them, Dick says to me, could you do Nancy and I a favor? And I said, what's that? He said, could you go in the other room there and take a shower? I was like, oh, my God. That was so humiliating.
Yeah, right.
So I went in, I took a shower, and they had these hospital scrubs. I got in them and went to bed. But you could only stay there 3 days, and then you had to commit to a rehab. And I wouldn't do that. I was terrified of a rehab. So at the end of 3 days, miraculously, my wife came and got me. And I went home, sat on my couch, and I knew if I left the house, I'd drink. I knew it. That was...
So it's interesting, even though you were at a real low, you still couldn't do it.
I had to drink.
Yeah.
It was, I had to drink.
What was your detox like? Was it like awful trying to detox from it, or did they take care of you medically?
No, they didn't. They didn't do anything.
You slept it off. That was it.
I just took some Tylenol or whatever and just slept. And I remember shaking for days trying to drink coffee. And I'd put my hands in my pocket so people wouldn't see my hands shake.
Yeah.
I'm sitting on my couch shaking, and I know if I leave the house, I'll drink. 7:30, knock on the door, and it's Dick from the detox center.
No kidding.
And I look at him, and he says, hey, jump in the car, Roger. He said, we're going to go to an AA meeting. And I said, I don't want to go to an AA meeting. He said, I didn't ask you if you wanted to go to an AA meeting. I told you to get in the car. I'm like, okay. So I got in the car,
So we
went to the
kidnapped
meeting.
you.
Yeah, so I get in the car, I go to a meeting, and it was in the cellar of this church, way over in the corner, there were cobwebs and spiders, and there's like 6 or 7 people there. And I'm like, this is weird. So I sit through the meeting. I come home, and wife says, I was in the meeting. I said, man, it sucked. Those people have no idea what my problems are. And next night, 7:30, guess what happened?
Dick showed up.
Dick showed up again, knocking on my door.
That pesky Dick.
Drags me off to another meeting. I come home. Honey, this meeting sucked worse than the other one. And I think he came 3 nights. And then he sent his buddies, one of his buddies, to get me. And finally I said, I'll get myself to meetings. You guys pick me up. And this big dude, can I mention his name?
Oh, sure.
Yeah. This big dude named Oscar says to me, if you don't show up, we're going to come and find you. And he was serious, man. I'm like, ooh. So I kept going to meetings, and I didn't get it.
So those first bunch of meetings, you sat through the meeting and you were like, that's not me.
Right. You know, these people were talking about things like anger and fear and jealousy, and I'm like,
who talks about that?
what the hell has that got to do with my drinking? Right?
Right.
Right? And so I'm just going through the meetings, you know, sitting there white-knuckling it through the meetings. I'm like, oh, these people, they're driving me crazy. And I did that for weeks and weeks, just sitting there going through the meetings. And then one night this guy says, did you ever sit in a bar drinking and you didn't want to be there but you couldn't get up and leave?
Oh, damn.
I was like, oh, man, I know exactly what he's talking about, right? So I started concentrating on him, right? And then a few nights later, this woman said when she picked up a drink, she couldn't predict with any certainty where she'd end up. I was like,
You starting to see yourself a little?
yeah.
Yeah.
I'm like, I went out one Friday night. Right. Sunday morning, I climbed out of a car and I was in Montreal, Canada. Had no clue how I got there, you know. That's not normal behavior.
No.
No.
Everyone's speaking French to you like, am I in France?
Yeah, I ended up on St. Catherine Street once.
Really?
Yep.
Just
Not a clue where I was. Yep.
Yeah, I had to ask a guy. Guy's walking down the street, and I asked him, what's the name of this city? And he
they're
says,
like,
Montreal. I'm like, oh.
It's all in French.
well, isn't that a pleasant surprise?
Yeah, wow.
So you're starting to hear some things that are starting to click, huh?
Yeah.
Are they suggesting a big book? Are they suggesting sponsorship, any of that stuff?
Yeah, they were suggesting, you know, they were pushing you could go to step meetings. And, right, I'd made it through the first step, right? First step I could accept, right? But they kept throwing this God thing at me. And I knew that God didn't want anything to do with me after all the stuff I'd done.
Of course, that's what you learned.
You know,
You're a sinner, and
God doesn't want anything to do with me. And then I was angry at God because God abandoned me.
Yeah.
That was the way I thought. God
you get
abandoned
this
me.
way.
And so I wasn't going to go for this third step deal, and so I messed around with the steps for years. And any step that had God or higher power, that didn't apply to me. You guys work it.
Now, did you have a sponsor at the time?
I had a guy that came up and told me he was my sponsor, and his name was Russell, and he was what a character. He was he had black, slick back Elvis type hair. He was as skinny as a pencil. He only had one lung, and he had that strut to him. He'd walk into a meeting, right, and he would just walk up to me and he would say these things, off the wall things. Like he came up, he just walked in one night and he says, "If nobody's told you they love you today, let me be the first."
wow.
I'm like, what's that about? And I'm looking at him, and he just walks over and gets a cup of coffee and leaves. Right?
Just leaves that with you.
And then one night he walks in, and he stands there, and he looks at me, and he says, "Who pissed in your oatmeal this morning?" And And then he walks away and leaves me, right?
Awesome.
The master of the one-liner.
I got to start doing this.
I think he could see by my facial expressions that something was bothering me, right? But he would sit and talk with me. And boy, the guy he was really on the ball. He was a great guy. He helped me a lot. I struggled with this God concept for probably 10 years.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I messed around with the steps, but...
You were still going, though.
Still going to meetings because, I had to work through a lot of resentments. I had to, I had to make a lot of apologies and amends. So that kept me busy.
Yeah.
So
sure.
you were doing the rest of the steps then?
Yeah, basically I was, yeah. So it kept me busy, but then I reached a point where the program was running out of steam for me. And I went to a meeting one night, and I went to my go-to guy, Stan. I went to Stan, and I said, explained to Stan that I wasn't going anyplace. And I said, if this is all there is, I'm not going to stay. And he says, Roger, you probably ought to start doing something about the spiritual part of this program. And I had a comeback line. I had it all prepared, right? And he walked away. He just left me. Like a rustler.
Like,
he just leaves me,
What is it
right?
with these guys?
Yeah, he just leaves me, right? And I'm like, oh, man. So I was angry at him. I was going to kill him in the parking lot after the meeting, and I sat there stewing through the meeting. And then on the way home, I'm like, he's right. I've been avoiding that part of this program. And so I had to do something about it, so I started working on it. And I found out God's not angry at me.
Now, when you say you started working on it, what did that look like? Like, what was that like for you?
What was your first step?
What was my first step? Well, I went about it kind of wrong. My first step was I went back to church. I had to go back to church. I had grown up. I had gone to church until I was 16 with my mother. I liked church. I loved church. But I had to go back to church. I went back to church and got some things straightened out. And then I started figuring out the spiritual part of the program. And, I pray every day. Ask for guidance from God. Because I realized the one thing that really got me was I sat at a meeting one night not paying attention. And I'm thinking about that night that I didn't order another beer. I made that phone call. I was thinking about that, and I'm like, I had nothing to do with that. I was so far gone.
Yeah.
I was like, man. And then I'm like, God stepped into my life. That was a God thing.
Yeah.
I was like, ooh.
So when you went back to church, I'm just curious, did church make a little more sense to you after being in the program for a while?
Yeah.
That was a big thing for me, too. I did the same thing to find mine.
Yeah.
And I went there and I hear some of the things that they're talking about. Man, there's some crazy correlation here with the program.
Yeah.
It was really fascinating, and that's what helped me realize what you said. It's not a punishing God, right?
No.
So, yeah, I was just curious about that.
Yeah, it started to make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So once you take this advice, Stan's advice, and you start working on the spiritual part of your program, how does that go? What happens?
Everything started to make sense. There was a lot of stuff that didn't make sense to me. And it made sense, and I don't know how to say it. It kind of opened up my mind to why I am the way I am and what happened to me. Right? When I drank, I suffered from low self-esteem and, all that stuff. But drink number 4 or 5, I fit in. It was like everybody else, right? And I was cool. But that all made sense to me. Those were some of the reasons I drank. But the main reason was because I'm an alcoholic.
Right.
when I put alcohol in my body, all bets are off. I don't know when I'll stop.
But to find that alcoholic in you, there was reasons why you did it, right?
Yep.
And that's some of the mental stuff that we go through. But I think for me, I'm also a low self-esteem person. And the same result when I drank, man, I was somebody, right? And all of a sudden that's gone, and we're through the program, but all of a sudden realizing that there's something that is out there that looks like it's going to take care of me for the most part. I had a little more and a new confidence when that happened. And
that new confidence is everything.
Oh, yeah.
It is.
And it is, Roger. It's hard to find the reason, right? Or what that moment was or what it was. That's hard to find sometimes, the moment, right? When we start exploring that. It happens.
Was like quite a few years ago, I had a heart attack. I suffered from AFib. I had a heart attack. Mm-hmm. And I was in this hospital, and they had to keep me there because they couldn't send me to this hospital where the cardiologists were. They had to keep me there because this hospital couldn't handle it, couldn't take any more people in. So I spent the night there. So I'm in the emergency room, and around 11 o'clock, they dimmed all the lights. I'm the only one in there, right? I'm just laying there, and I'm watching the heart monitor, and my heart's way out of rhythm. And I'm just laying there looking at it, listening to that beep, 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 right? And I just knew everything was going to be okay.
Right.
I'm like, whatever way this turns out, it's fine.
What will be, will be.
Yep, it's going to be okay.
And that gives you a peace.
I was like, okay. And my wife doesn't understand that, but...
As long as you do. I mean, when you meet life on life's terms like that, there's a certain serenity that goes with it, And once you get a taste of that, you're like, that's what I want. That's what I want out of life. Just that.
And then we start controlling it as much. I say.
And I know, plus, when you're working 4, 5, 6, and 7, and you start chipping away at those character defects, and you start making some progress, that does build up your self-esteem. You'll say, I don't have to lie anymore.
And I'm not that bad. Not that different than these people,
Right.
And I can change.
Yeah.
And I am changing.
Yeah.
That's huge. And then you move on for the rest of the steps, and then do you start working with other people? Do you find other people to help?
Yeah. I'm a terrible sponsor.
I'll argue with that all day long.
Well, as long as your people live, you're doing better than me.
Yeah, I just don't have the ability to be a sponsor, right? Mm-hmm. But there's a lot of people have come up and asked me advice.
Yeah.
And one of the most gratifying, things is when somebody comes up and says to you, a woman said this to me. She said, I was going to leave the program, and what you said at the meeting last Tuesday night made me stay, made me keep coming back. I'm like, wow.
You're sitting right next to one of those people right now.
I'm just Roger. I'm just a garden variety alcoholic.
Yeah, I'm just repeating what I was told.
Right.
Yeah.
The thing about sponsorship, because I was, sponsorship before you do it and you're looking at it is very daunting because you want to do it right, you want to do it perfect. And all my sponsor said to me was, just do what your sponsor did. And I was like, well, I can do that. Mm-hmm. And that's what I started doing. And I started taking my people I was sponsoring through as close as I could to the way my sponsor did to me, and it worked pretty good. And I know that a lot of people that I've sponsored, I always try to get them, once they get a couple of years, I'm like, you got to sponsor somebody. That's the way this works. Yeah. You have to give it away.
Or be active in helping people, right?
And I could tell they're feeling like, well, nobody would want me as a sponsor.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like, bullshit. Just do for them what I did for you. Which is what my sponsor did for me, which is what his sponsor did for him. And that's the way it works, and it's that simple. And, success isn't based on whether or not they stay sober. It is for them. But for you as a sponsor, it's just based on if you're there for them and you tell them the right things. Whether they do them or not, that's out of your control. Right. And I found out the hard way many times with, sponsors either leaving the program or leaving the earth. And, it's hard, and it's part of the learning process of sponsoring someone.
But even so, even though you really haven't sponsored, and I'm doing air quotes, you know what the feeling's like when you help somebody, right?
Oh, yeah.
And that's something we have to do, right? And that's why. So that's, to see that you're able to do that and recognize that makes you want to keep going, I'm sure.
One of the questions that popped into my head was, after I realized that God had stepped into my life that night, right? I'm like, why me? There's thousands of suffering alcoholics out there. Why me? I'm an average Joe Schmo, right?
Mm-hmm.
Why me, right? And so I mentioned it at a meeting one night, and this woman at the meeting, the next meeting, she gave me this card. And I read the card, and in it said that God picked me because I have the ability to help another alcoholic get sober. What's my first reaction to that?
No.
It's whoa.
Wait a minute.
Wait a minute. Don't put that responsibility on me.
I didn't sign up for this.
You know, I got enough problems, right? But then I said it to her, and she went, "Tough, live with it."
Yeah.
I'm like, "Oh man," but it's true.
It is.
It's true. We all have that ability.
And there aren't many of us. When you look at the numbers, we are kind of the chosen few.
Yeah, we are a really minute minority of people out there that are suffering from this disease. Part of part of the deal, though, is to continue growing in the program after you do the steps, is that you have to start sharing that with other people. That's how to deepen. That for me, that's how I deepen my sobriety, is by working with other people, doing things like this.
Absolutely.
Doing service work, sometimes just showing up at meetings, which I know you do on a regular basis.
Especially for people that look forward to hearing from you,
right?
Like me.
And you know what? Let me ask you this question, because people have asked me this, and I've got coming up on 35 years. People outside of the program will say, "Jesus, why do you still go to meetings then? I mean, is it really a problem for you anymore?"
I go to meetings because I've seen what happens to people that don't go to meetings, that stop going. And I've watched a lot of them fall to the wayside, and I couldn't help them, right? Plus, I learned a long time ago it's my responsibility to be at meetings, because there were people there when I came to help me, so it's my responsibility to be there, right? Because some night I'll say something and somebody will come up and say, "Man, that was really helped me." You know, so it's my responsibility. Plus, I love Alcoholics Anonymous. Absolutely love it.
So you mentioned maintaining your spirituality and constantly growing that. Is that something you do currently? Is that part of your life?
Yeah. Yep. I'm very involved in my church.
That's what I thought, yeah.
Very involved. Love my church.
Yeah.
It's, I don't know, fills a big void in my life. Doing that fourth and fifth step, this just came into my brain.
Sure. Yeah.
Doing that fourth and fifth step was difficult for me to find somebody to sit down and talk to. Because I was sure that I was the most despicable human being on the earth, right? And I sat down with a guy, and I unloaded a whole bunch of stuff, and he just looked at me and smiled, and he says, "Is that all you got?" And I was like, it was kind of deflating, you know, it crushed my ego.
Yeah.
And, you know, and then he told me some of the things that he had done, right? And he said, we all did bad things. We just did different bad things. I'm like, yeah, I guess. You know.
Yeah, so I was also thinking, I'm thinking about long-term sobriety and going to meetings, is that after all these decades, I still hear new things. I still hear new takes on stuff. And you know what? I might have heard them 15 years ago. I just don't remember them. And a lot of stuff that I heard at the last meeting, I've forgotten since.
Yeah.
I got to hear it again and again and again, right?
It's the newcomer.
Oh, that's where I hear the
Somebody
best stuff.
new,
Yeah,
and
I
all
hear
of a
the
sudden,
best stuff.
All of a sudden they say something, and I'm like, why didn't I think of that? Why didn't I approach it from that direction, right? I'm like, wow, So for 2 or 3 days, I'll be thinking about that.
Yeah.
And also,
cool.
The fact that sobriety is a practice. You don't get sober and then you graduate. It's a practice. And in order to keep that practice going, for me, meetings are essential.
Yep.
They're an essential part of my practice. I have to meet with other alcoholics. if I could have just went to the bookstore, back in the day, go to Barnes & Noble and buy the big book and read it and get cured, I probably would have done that.
Yeah.
But that's not the way it works. There's a lot of different pieces to it, and a big part of it for me is the fellowship.
Yeah.
And showing up at meetings.
It's not a self-help program.
It's not. And people think it is. They do.
Absolutely.
They go, you go to that self-help program.
One of my favorite stories about that is a sponsor that went over to somebody's house, and he didn't care. He just walked in, right? And the one guy, he was like, "So, this is your place?" And he goes, "Yeah." And the guy that he was sponsoring says, "Let me come over to my library. I want to show you all the books that I've read," right? And he says, "Man, you've got a lot of self-help books here." And he's like, "Yep, I've read them all. I'm doing great." And he says, "But where's your help others books," right? And so that was pretty cool to think about, because it is not a self-help program. It does help us,
right?
But it's not us doing it. That's for dang sure.
Yep. And that essential element of helping other people in any way, making coffee, speaking, listening, phone calling, texting, whatever it takes, that's all part of it for me. And it really, you hear a lot of people with long-term sobriety say, "All my friends are in AA."
Yeah.
I kind of built my life around this.
Oh, my gosh, yes.
That's where I've made my best friendships and my most solid connections in my community. And, it's true. I mean, we just like when we drank, we find our people. When you're out drinking, you find other people that drink like you do, and you hang with them, right? Or if people are doing drugs, they end up hanging out with the people that do the same drugs just like they do.
Yeah.
And so, I heard this the other day, and I mentioned this in a meeting last night, that AA is, besides being a 12-step program and everything else it also is socially contagious. In that if you come into the fellowship and you start hanging out and socializing with these people, you start picking up their traits, the traits of sobriety. Probably without even realizing it. But a lot of it is you see other people and the way they act, and you say to yourself, this guy, that's what sobriety is. This guy's acting sober. He's apologizing when he's wrong.
We're always promoting good things.
Yeah,
right?
He's reaching out to help people. So that attraction is part of the social contagion of sobriety that we get at when we go to the fellowship.
I want to be like Mike.
It is for me. Yeah. I wanted to be like my sponsor.
Right, of course.
My sponsor was just, this guy had his shit together, and I was like, if I can be like him, And some of the stuff he did was surprising to me, in that he would say, "I'm going to the meeting tonight at 8." And I would say, "Oh, well, there's one at 7:30, he goes, "Well, I'm going to the one at 8. If you want to go, see me there." And he would just leave it at that. So he was going to do what he was going to do.
That's right.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I found a certain respect for that this guy that was his path. And if I wanted
you sure
to tag
did follow in his footsteps, because you won't go to a different meeting with me.
Oh, someday, Brett. No, I go to
Just
different
kidding.
meetings. But,
I'm just
yeah, and
kidding.
sadly enough, he went out. He called me after, I want to say 12 years, and he had moved out of state. And he said, "I just want to let you know that I went out."
Wow.
And that it happens. And if you get far away from the program like I did, it happens.
Yeah.
I appreciated
tale.
it. Yeah, he gave me a cautionary tale. So,
we're talking about you just naturally get better and you act better. Those years that I couldn't do the steps right, just going to meetings and hanging around with other AA people, I got better.
You got there till it got you.
My behavior was better, right? I respect was there. I respected people.
All types.
Yep.
Yeah, a lot of people on the outside think AA is for people who want to quit drinking, and it is. But there's so much more to it. There's so much more to sobriety than putting the drink down. And I always say to people, that's the first step, and you have to do it, and you have to do it right every day. But there's so much more to it.
That first step was so terrifying to me.
Yeah.
And then because deep down I had this feeling that if I exposed my inner self to you, you would ridicule me or laugh at me, right, or just walk away and not even talk to me anymore, right? That's the fear I had. And I got brave one night and I asked this guy, I said, do you ever suffer from loneliness? And he said, "Yeah, big time." And I said, huh, so do I. And I was like, man, there's somebody here like me.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and I don't think that's isolated in AA. I think a lot of people. I mean, I know when at the end of my drinking, I was alone. I was completely alone.
The loneliness was
Yeah.
awful.
I ended up in a mental hospital because of it.
Yeah, and then when you come in, it's not like that just goes away.
Yeah, there was nobody to talk to. Nobody understood me.
Right.
Well, that is the
Thank
magic
God
of
we
AA.
found what we did, right?
Oh, yeah.
Are you, if we were to do a customer survey of AA, are you satisfied with the service that you have received?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, you
absolutely.
get a good endorsement, do you, Roger?
Would you give us a 5-star rating?
Sometimes the coffee isn't, as good as it could be.
My
but,
God, sometimes you feel like you got to shave your tongue afterwards.
yeah.
Yeah,
So,
if you were unhappy, tell us. If you're happy, tell others.
yeah, right.
But yeah, it's going to be coming up on 100 years soon, right? 10 years from now or something,
Wow.
right?
Yeah.
That
AA.
AA's
Oh,
been
yeah.
around. No, not
Not
you, Roger.
Not yet.
I was thinking about how old I am,
Jesus, I guess I am too.
It's coming pretty fast.
But yeah, that's. I hope I'm alive to see that.
Yeah, right.
That'd be cool. So.
That'd be cool.
Well, Roger, thanks so much for coming on. It's
great being with you guys.
Story and
Thank you.
your wisdom. And until next time on the Glum Lot Podcast, I'm Mark.
I'm Brett.
And I'm Roger.
As we wrap up another episode of the Glum Lot Podcast, we want to extend our heartfelt gratitude to each and every one of you who tuned in today. Navigating the path to recovery from alcohol and other substances is a journey filled with challenges, triumphs, and self-discovery. Remember, we're not affiliated with Alcoholics Anonymous, but we're here to provide a safe space for open conversations about the complexities of recovery. Your stories, courage, and resilience inspire us and our listeners alike. If you or someone you know is on the transformative journey, know that you're not alone. Join us next time as we continue to explore the diverse facets of recovery. Until then, stay strong, stay connected, and remember that each day is a step towards a brighter, sober tomorrow. Thank you for being part of the Glum Lot community.